Welcome to Eternal Night, where we explore the most terrifying and tragic events in history. Tonight, we delve into a haunting chapter in American history, an event that forever changed the nation and left an indelible scar on the hearts of many. It's a story of violence, fear, and the aftermath of an unspeakable tragedy. Tonight, we talk about the Columbine High School shooting, an event that shook the world and left us all asking the same question: what went wrong? So, settle in, dim the lights, and prepare yourself for an exploration of one of the darkest days in modern history. On April 20th, 1999, Columbine High School, located in Littleton, Colorado, was a typical suburban high school, filled with the buzz of teenage life. Students hurried to class, friendships were forged, and the smell of cafeteria pizza filled the hallways. On the outside, Columbine appeared just like any other high school in America, a safe, quiet place where young people could learn and grow. But for a few troubled students, this seemingly normal day would mark the beginning of a nightmare. The events of that fateful day would forever change the way we viewed school safety, mental health, and the dangers lurking in the shadows of society. The two perpetrators of the Columbine High School shooting were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, two 17-year-old students who, on the surface, seemed like typical teenagers. Both were members of the high school's senior class, and both were known by their peers for being a bit on the fringes, though not necessarily the most popular. Eric Harris, a charismatic but troubled teenager, had been expelled from his job at a fast food restaurant for aggressive behavior. Dylan Klebold, on the other hand, was often seen as a quiet and introspective individual who struggled with feelings of depression and anger. Together, they formed a bond that would ultimately lead to the unthinkable. Harris, the more dominant of the two, had a history of violent thoughts and behaviors, which were evident in his journals and online presence. He frequently wrote about his desire to commit a massive act of violence and his disdain for society. Dylan Klebold, although also disturbed, seemed to be more of a follower in this partnership, feeding off of Harris's plans and ideas. Both had been planning the attack for nearly a year, meticulously preparing for what they envisioned as an act of revenge, a catastrophic act that would leave the world reeling. But what exactly motivated these two teenagers? Was it hatred, desperation, or something darker? Harris and Klebold's plan began to take shape in late 1998. The two spent months assembling a deadly arsenal, acquiring firearms, bombs, and ammunition. They obtained weapons from private sellers, often through illegal means, and planned to execute a massive bombing at Columbine High School. The original plan was to plant bombs in the school's cafeteria, timed to go off during lunchtime, when the area would be crowded with students. Their goal was simple: maximum casualties. After the bombs exploded, Harris and Klebold intended to gun down any survivors they could find. However, their bombs failed to detonate as planned. By the time they decided to launch their backup plan, the entire school was already in chaos. Instead of running for cover, students and faculty were forced to deal with the horrifying reality of an active shooter situation. The attack began at around 11:19 a.m., a Tuesday morning like any other. As the bells rang and students filed into their classes, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold entered the school grounds, armed with semi-automatic rifles, handguns, and homemade bombs. The school was completely unaware of the impending danger, but all of that would change in an instant. The two teenagers began their attack outside the school, shooting and killing one student, Rachel Scott, and another student, Daniel Rorbo, before heading into the school. They immediately opened fire in the cafeteria, but the bombs failed to go off as planned. At this point, the chaos began to spread across the campus. Inside the school, students and teachers were in the midst of their usual routine. But when the shots rang out, fear and panic took over. Harris and Klebold roamed the halls, shooting indiscriminately at students and faculty. They encountered and shot at several students, some of whom attempted to flee the school, while others bravely tried to barricade themselves in classrooms. Throughout the attack, the two showed no remorse. They seemed almost detached from the violence, as though they were carrying out a twisted plan with cold precision. Over the next 49 minutes, the two gunmen killed 12 students and one teacher, while injuring 21 others, some severely. The horrifying part: the two shooters made their way through the hallways, entering various classrooms, shooting at anyone they encountered. The brutality of their actions, combined with their apparent indifference, made the Columbine shooting one of the most terrifying events in modern history. In the wake of the shooting, the entire world watched in shock as the news unfolded. The Columbine High School shooting left a deep and lasting mark on the community of Littleton, the United States, and the world as a whole. The immediate aftermath was filled with fear and confusion. Parents desperately searched for their children, not knowing whether they were safe or in danger. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, attempting to stop the carnage and save as many lives as possible. The survivors of the attack faced a life of pain, trauma, and emotional scars. Many would struggle with the memories of that day, dealing with survivors' guilt, PTSD, and a profound sense of loss. In the months and years following the shooting, many of the survivors went on to speak out about their experiences, hoping to bring awareness to issues like school safety, mental health, and bullying. The victims, too, would never be forgotten. Their families, devastated by the loss of their loved ones, found themselves thrust into the spotlight, seeking justice for their children and loved ones. The names of the victims, Rachel Scott, Daniel Rorbo, Kyle Velasquez, and the others, are etched into the collective memory of America as a reminder of the tragedy that forever altered their lives. The Columbine shooting was a defining moment in the history of school shootings. It became the catalyst for national conversations about gun violence, school safety, and the mental health crisis in America. The Columbine effect, as it's often referred to, has been seen in the aftermath of other school shootings, with the media often comparing future tragedies to Columbine. In the years that followed, the tragedy led to sweeping changes in school policies and law enforcement procedures. Schools implemented zero-tolerance policies for violence, and security measures were drastically increased, with many schools across the country now employing armed guards, metal detectors, and surveillance cameras to protect students. But even with these changes, the questions linger. How can we prevent tragedies like Columbine from happening again? What went wrong with Harris and Klebold, and how can we address the deeper issues that lead to such violence? The answers remain elusive, and the legacy of Columbine serves as a sobering reminder of the ongoing need for change in our society. On April 20th, 1999, the lives of the Dardeen family, the survivors, and the families of the victims were forever changed. The Columbine High School shooting was a horrific act of violence that left behind a nation in mourning and a world questioning the reality of school safety. As we remember the tragedy, let us also honor the lives lost and the bravery of those who survived. Their stories, their voices, will never be forgotten. Thank you for joining me here at Eternal Night. As always, stay safe, stay aware, and keep your loved ones close.